Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Listening Lounge. My name is Nick Day and I'm CEO of JGA Recruitment Group, and we're specialist payroll and HR recruiters. Now, they say the quieter we are, the more we hear, and that listening is the secret to discovering the greatest of stories. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's fantastic guest. Today, I'm joined by Duncan Casemore, who is CEO and co-founder at Applaud, a workforce experience layer that makes digital HR simple. Now, something really interesting today is we're going to be tackling a subject that I'm personally interested in because I want to know more about it, and that's talking about the Metaverse. Now, with Meta investing 150 million in creating an immersive learning ecosystem, which they believe will make personal development more accessible through the Metaverse, and with recent surveys such as that undertaken by Express VPN, claiming that 46% of Gen Z and 19% of baby boomers saying that within the next 2 years, they foresee themselves working in the metaverse, I wanted to bring this topic to life in today's show to discover if, with such rapid technological advances we're all experiencing in the HR sphere right now, if the metaverse indeed will become the workplace that all of us will start to experience as an everyday reality. There will be some people listening to this show who don't even know what the metaverse is. I've given a very brief introduction into what we're going to be talking about today. So I wondered if, before we jump into why it's important you understand it and how it could impact the world of HR, if you could just bring to life what the metaverse is and why it's really important we do get to grips with what it is and how it may potentially impact us in the future.
Yeah, it really does take getting your head around for a while. The best way to experience it is to stick on a virtual reality headset and have a go. It can take on many different forms, but really all of them involve wearing some sort of VR headset, whether it's something from Meta or Apple's new headset or some other one. And many and nearly all of the headsets have some sort of capability to interact with the metaverse. So you stick on your headset, you immerse yourself into this virtual reality world around you, where you can move your hands, you can touch and feel things that aren't really there. You be careful not to walk into chairs and other furniture around you. There's real health and safety things we need to talk about later with regards to the metaverse. And it's a way that you can engage with other people or other things in real-time collaboration through virtual reality. And it's very interesting. I don't think the world is quite decided yet whether there's going to be one metaverse, whether it's going to be like a new internet out there and it's a single thing that everybody can interact with in different ways, or whether there's going to be lots of different metaverses and it's more like a Facebook metaverse and an Apple metaverse and a Google metaverse and lots of different metaverses. So I don't think anyone's really quite decided what it is, but it's really a virtual space that people can get together with and collaborate and do all sorts of quite interesting things that I think are tremendously exciting and potentially really disruptive in the world of work.
We've tackled virtual reality on this show in the past. I think some companies are doing some really interesting things in relation to inclusivity, diversity, and things like that, where they try and help you put the mask on of how someone else would feel in a public situation and how people's reactions to it. And you can almost feel like somebody else, and they're trying to use it from that kind of HR angle. But from your perspective, and I know you're doing a lot of work in this field, what's the potential impact of the metaverse on the future of work? I've given one very small example of my experience of it, but I know it's far more ranging than that. So I wonder if you can bring that into view.
Yeah, it can be quite theoretical. So I always love to use examples about how we can bring this kind of technology to life and what it can and can't do. I think there's so many different use cases. I'll talk through some of what they are. We've used it ourselves at Applaud a few times. So a couple of use cases that we've used. We've held virtual reality events where we've had roundtables in the metaverse, where we've all been sitting around a virtual boardroom, having conversations, interacting with a whiteboard, and talking about other topics. That in itself it sounds a little bit like a Zoom call, but it's actually really different to the Zoom call because it's so much more immersive. You can interact with things, you can touch things, you can type on a virtual keyboard with a projected keyboard, a projected monitor in front of you, and you can hear things in 3D. So with Zoom, you don't have the interrupted issue where someone talks and someone stops and they all apologize. With virtual reality, it's 3D sound, so you can hear and see and look when someone else is talking. You can see their expressions, their emotions, and it's much more like a real physical meeting room environment. So I mean, that's an obvious use case, is to have virtual collaboration. That's more of an evolution of something like Zoom that doesn't begin to touch the edges of what can be achieved. Some of the other things that we've done is we've created a metaverse, which is almost like an art gallery of our own company, where you can walk around the art gallery and interact with videos, posters, artwork, and all of the things around our brand. And that's a really, really interesting way for organizations to be able to present some kind of event or environment in which people can interact with that organization. It could be for prospective employees to get a feel for what it's actually like working somewhere. It could be to interact with career information about benefits, or it could be consumer facing, so it's designed for the customers. So it's a really interesting couple of examples there. I think some of the ones that start to get really interesting is, so learning and development, clearly a hot topic for this podcast, is a very, very hot area for the metaverse, because there are new ways that employees can learn, new ways that organizations can offer learning that cannot be provided virtually today, and in some cases cannot even be provided physically today. So an example of a consumer example of this, imagine an architect having a meeting with a prospective customer where they project a 3D model of a building and overlay that into a real world environment, so they can actually see what a building might look like and touch it and interact with it virtually, and make amendments to it live. You couldn't do that face to face. You couldn't do that on a Zoom. That's an example of something which is really interesting. An example of learning could be doctors and medical professionals practicing with instruments and practicing operations that are difficult or risky in a virtual environment, which of course is completely risk-free. That's a brilliant use case, and we're already seeing
a great user case.
We're seeing that quite a lot in the real world already, and some surgeons are already performing operations remotely. And I think that
you can replicate that in bomb disposal or other things as well, right? Which we could possibly do, which involve lots of danger and intricate learnings, but you don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, and a more mundane level is health and safety in the workplace, in a manufacturing environment where you've got equipment that could potentially be dangerous. Not quite bomb disposal, but nevertheless, you could lose a finger. It's a great way to provide a safe environment in which people can learn. So I think that's a really interesting example. There's also examples of potentially places where you can have virtual workspaces, collaboration spaces. It could be a meeting room. It could be a place where people can get together. And within that virtual space, the advantage of doing it in the metaverse over doing it face-to-face is obviously you don't have the travel, but you also can interact with things using your hands, which is not something you can do on Zoom. You can touch things, you can pick things up, you can hand them around, you can move them, you can interact with them, you can build things in 3D, and you can all see it together at the same time. So I think there's some really interesting ways that people can get together in virtual spaces. And it's also quite a good trading ground as well. I think some gaming organizations have already built games in the metaverse where you can buy artwork, you can buy space, and you can build on it. And so I think there's going to be new business models, new commercial opportunities that are presented to organizations to be able to trade things, to buy and sell stuff and services. And that, of course, will then create employment opportunities, new employment opportunities, and new types of careers that just don't even exist today. So I think there's some really disruptive, interesting ways that potentially can have quite a big impact on the future of work.
Sure. I think presumably things like team building as well, challenges, you can bring teams together to solve, team building now, and this employee experience piece is more important than we've seen it for a little while, particularly with everyone being disparate, people now working remotely. I assume you can bring everyone into one space to solve a challenge, a puzzle, or whatever it might be. You can kind of do that on an escape room, for example. You could have that in the metaverse and try and escape it as a group, all talking and all kind of working together. I know from my perspective, which is very limited, by the way, but I do have a virtual reality headset at home. And I know things like my dad, for example, is fearful of heights, but we've got walk the plank on it. Now I know it's you can walk down a plank and experience something where you're on the top of a building walking across, and when you're in that world, it feels very, very real. And his legs are shaking and all the things are going on, but he's just walking along a plank which is laid on the floor. But I guess in that kind of experience, again, it's using that dangerous element, which there is no danger in that instance, but it feels it. So you can work over those learned behaviors, try and overcome your fears in that particular example. But obviously I can see how that could transcend. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of The Listening Lounge. My name is Nick Day. And remember, every great conversation starts with great listening. Till next time.